Hey guys, let's. I know a lot of you gonna be upset with this video. Every time I've made these type of videos in the past, they've got mixed reception, and I get it. I get it. I get every time I compare Xbox to PlayStation. There's a huge part of my audience that doesn't necessarily want Xbox to follow in any of the roads that PlayStation has went down, and to a point, I understand. I get it, but I feel like we got to have this conversation again. I've had this conversation multiple times throughout the years. And now, with the release of Spider-Man, we gotta have it again. Microsoft and Xbox need their own superhero. It's just apparent at this point. It's very clear that they need some type of mainstream audience like this. I have screamed to the top of my lungs so much that I just felt like no one was listening. And to a point, I still don't think that, you know, anyone's listening. But I will say that in terms of Spider-Man 2, today the Metacritic officially went live. And as you can see, game scoring very well. 91 on Metacritic right now. And, that's part of the biggest issue that, we're talking about right now is we're talking about, do they need this type of coverage? And to a point, I can understand where people are coming from. I've had a lot of people tell me, Addict, just because this Spider-Man does well doesn't mean other heroes are going to do well. Spider-Man's one of the biggest heroes you can really have. So it would make sense that besides maybe, Wolverine, which Insomniac's making, and maybe the Fantastic Four, which I don't think Microsoft could even snatch that anymore because of Wolverine being made by Insomniac. Maybe a Captain America game or a Black Panther game, and there's some Black Panther games being made as well. But that's people's argument pretty much. They're like, look, Addict, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't see a good scenario where Microsoft and Xbox get like a hero that actually makes sense. It's got to be in the MCU to some degree. And I guess you can go away from the MCU, maybe go to the DC port. James Gunn has been over there saying for a minute now that, they want to combine the lore of their games, anime, movies, and their comics all together in one. So maybe they're looking for a developer to make those type of games. We have a Wonder Woman game coming out here relatively soon, but after that, what's DC, what's Warner Brother, who's going to make their games? Obviously they got studios that are there, but if Microsoft pulls in and offers to fund some of these games, maybe these games can be only on Xbox. Now, I understand where people are coming from when it comes to this. Microsoft can fight PlayStation without doing any of the tactics that PlayStation does. But what I would argue is this year, sales have been pretty bad when it comes to consoles. In some scenarios, they were losing 4-1. And that's with a relatively dry year for PlayStation. They really didn't have a whole lot as far as their first party coming out. Now you got Spider-Man coming out being a 9 out of 10 type of game. 91 on Metacritic. I'm not saying that they necessarily need this. I'm not saying that. I don't want people thinking that. I just feel like in order for Microsoft and Xbox to be the brand that can compete worldwide, they need worldwide branding. Now, you can argue that not even Spider-Man's entirely worldwide, but I would say it's strong enough to make a dent. There's a lot of people around the world that knows what that Spider-Man outfit looks like, and they know who that is just from the sight of the outfit. And I think Microsoft needs more of that. They need, a good post on what's popular right now, what's trending right now, mainstream media. And I feel like Microsoft, they don't really have that a whole lot. Now, I understand some of you are going to say, Addict, they have Indiana Jones coming out. And thanks to Pete Hines during the ABK, court hearing, we actually found out that it's looking like Indiana Jones is going to be a console exclusive for Xbox. It won't be on PlayStation. And that's good. I would say Indiana Jones is a good direction in that. But I wouldn't say Indiana Jones has the type of media coverage and the type of mainstream that I would expect to really drive Xbox forward. If you don't want to go the MCU route or the DC route, right now Disney's doing a lot of work with Star Wars, and Star Wars TV and movies throughout the years have definitely been up and down, but I feel like there's still a huge interest in the brand. And if you make good enough games, people will show. Look what happens with Star Wars Jedi Survivor. People love that, and it's just off the Star Wars name they're able to sell so many off of. I'm not saying that, Xbox direly needs this and they're not going to be able to compete without it. But I would say having a good IP that is brand worthy and that is popular, made into a good game, because that's the key point. The game has to be good, because at the end of the day, if you don't get a good studio to make the game that you go out and spend all this money on licensing, then what's the point? And I do feel like Microsoft has enough brand recognition at this point and enough money. Keep in mind, Microsoft does have that money, and enough studios where they can go out and find a studio that makes sense with what IP. I think at this point, Microsoft has enough quality studios where they can make any superhero they really wanted to, regardless if it's a platformer, a shooter, or, a third-person action adventure game, which I do think these type of games, you probably should go towards the third person for this particular thing. I'm not saying you do that to everything, but for this particular superhero type of thing, I think third person action adventure over the shoulder, vibes with that community a little bit more. And I'm not sitting there saying that Microsoft needs to make clones of PlayStation games. I'm just saying they need to make a couple. My friend Cognito of the Iron Lords podcast has a famous thing. He says #just1. And having an IP and superhero, and I don't think it would qualify to his standards because he says it's got to be a new IP. But I think if you come out there with a really good blade, with a good, combat system, maybe even put the Nemesis engine to some degree, because I know they have that copyrighted. Maybe have that, some form of that in here where some vampires are stronger than others and the game clarifies and justifies it. I think would work really well for Microsoft. Imagine if they were able to make a DC universe on Xbox and PlayStation's making an MCU universe. And I think that's what's happening. Insomniac, they just released Marvel Spider-Man 2, reviewing well. They have Wolverine coming out in the next couple years, and I see that doing well too. And then what happens after that? Do you guys honestly think they're just going to go back to making Ratchet and Clank? No, I think then they'll continue to make more MCU properties, and eventually they'll have a couple heroes on the platform that's not on Xbox, and then you start to see that maybe they should have went into this system. Now, obviously the MCU isn't where it was, and in the next couple years that could either get worse or better. And to me, you want to invest before it's better, because then everything on the price of the brick goes up. If MCU's doing better from a monetary value, they're going to ask for more money. If DC's doing better from monetary value, they're going to ask for more money. So this is when you get in on the ground floor, especially DC. MCU might be a little harder because of the relationship between Sony and Disney, but I think especially DC, get on there, see what is available, find one of your studios that is willing and wants to make that type of game, and see what happens. But when you put in the comment section below, like I said, what superhero did you guys want Xbox to make? I know that there's some of you that don't necessarily think that they need it, and that's valid criticism, but I think you still would want one. They might not need it, but doesn't mean that you don't want one. So which one would you want in the comment section below? And until next time, this is Gaming Addict. I'm out here. Peace.